The halls of Congress are often filled with political theater, but sometimes the performance cuts straight to the core of American power. In a recent House committee hearing, ostensibly titled to discuss restoring law and order, Democratic Representative Jasmine Crockett delivered a blistering opening statement that flipped the script entirely. She didn't just critique the opposition. She launched a full-scale accusation of systemic corruption and hypocrisy, backed by a series of shocking visual aids. We bring you the current news and information from the Capitol, and this is a story you need to understand. If you want to stay informed on the real stories shaping our nation, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Capitol Current. Your support ensures we can continue to deliver this kind of in-depth, objective analysis. The hearing was intended to focus on crime in U.S. cities, a key talking point for Republicans. But Ranking Member Crockett used her time to argue that the real threat to law and order comes not from the streets, but from within the political establishment itself. She systematically presented a case, complete with large photographs, alleging a pattern of corruption and lawlessness among key figures in the Republican sphere, particularly those connected to former President Donald Trump. You are about to see the full, unedited footage of her remarks. Pay close attention to the visual evidence she presents, as it forms the foundation of her powerful argument.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for calling this hearing. Since January, Donald Trump has used the full power of the federal government to attack Americans in cities across the country. In Donald Trump's America, you are at increased risk of experiencing militaristic operations in your home, increased risk of being subject to detainment by mass thugs and wannabe vigilantes, increased risk of suffering injuries due to reckless and illegal acts by rogue federal agents, increased risk of being deported to foreign nations even if you are an American citizen, and you're at an increased risk of being targeted by federal government for criticizing the president and his friends. Congressional Republicans have completely abandoned their Article I powers and have exchanged their responsibility to their constituents with fealty to the president. They have allowed the president to morph federal agencies into instruments of autocracy. And as a result, the president has been able to ignore federal law, disregard court orders, and implement the largest pay-for-play scheme in American history. The White House, well, what's left of it anyway, is literally up for sale. The federal courts have characterized this presidency as, quote, lawless. In fact, when ruling against illegal acts committed by the administration, a Republican-appointed federal judge stated, quote, the court cannot imagine how the public interest might be served by permitting federal officials to flaunt the very laws they have sworn to enforce. In a separate case where the administration was sued for unlawful acts, the judge, also a Republican appointee, stated, quote, allowing constitutional rights to be dependent upon the grace of the executive branch would be a dereliction of duty by this third and independent branch of government and would be against the public interest. But in another case, the court summed it up perfectly by declaring, quote, as is becoming far too common, we are confronted again with the efforts of the executive branch to set aside the rule of law in pursuit of its own goals. Judiciary Committee Republicans have been completely complicit in this corruption. But since they're so interested in restoring law and order, I have a couple of suggestions on where they can start. Number one, this is the President of the United States standing beside his best friend, Jeffrey Epstein. As we all know, Mr. Epstein is one of the most notorious sexual predators in American history. For 8 weeks, the Republicans on this committee have chosen to protect these two men instead of providing justice to Mr. Epstein's victims. Now the administration is panicking. First, they campaigned on releasing the Epstein files. Then AG Bondi and Associates did a photo op with the files, and she said, and I quote, the Epstein list is on my desk. Then somehow the Epstein list didn't exist. Then the Epstein files became a Democratic hoax. Now the president is supposedly supportive of releasing the files, even though he's currently ignoring a congressional subpoena to do so. Now the president is simply crashing out. And it's because he can't seem to explain his special decades-long relationship with one of the most prominent sexual predators in American history. It's already public that he's in the Epstein files, but his administration is hiding the context of his involvement, if any, with Mr. Epstein's horrific crimes. Now, this is Miss Ghislaine Maxwell. Miss Maxwell, who obviously helped Jeffrey Epstein traffic more than 1,000 women and girls, well, Donald Trump is now giving her special treatment while she's serving out her prison sentence. He won't even rule out giving her a pardon or commuting her sentence. I don't need to explain why pardoning sex traffickers wouldn't be restoring law and order. Now, this is Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem. Not only has Secretary Noem been busy filming propaganda ads, she's also been busy cashing in on millions of taxpayer dollars. In fact, Secretary Noem has funneled millions of dollars to a company called the Strategy Group. The Strategy Group helped Secretary Noem win her campaign to become the governor of South Dakota. Corey Lewandowski, her top policy advisor, has worked with the firm. And the company's CEO is married to Secretary Noem's chief spokesperson, Mrs. Tricia McLaughlin. This is what corruption looks like. They're stealing money from the American people's pockets and depositing it into their bank accounts. Now we move on to yet somebody else. This is the so-called border czar, Tom Homan. Mr. Homan is on tape accepting $50,000 in cash bribes stuffed in a brown paper bag from an undercover FBI agent. Apparently, Mr. Homan accepted these bribes in exchange for awarding federal contracts to his friends. Trump's Department of Justice killed the investigation into Mr. Homan's crimes, and congressional Republicans didn't say a mumbling word. Lastly, this is insurrectionist and Nazi sympathizer Ed Martin. It appears that Mr. Martin is functioning as the Associate Deputy Attorney General, Pardon Attorney, Director of the Fake Weaponization Working Group, and Special Attorney for Mortgage Fraud. All that means is that Mr. Martin is Trump's lapdog, whom the president sends to initiate lawsuits against the president's perceived political opponents. This is what we call organized crime. They're breaking the law, often by stealing taxpayer dollars, covering up their crimes by ending and obstructing investigations, then prosecuting people who call out their unlawful behavior. And while the Republicans are encouraging this corruption, they're abandoning actual victims of violent crime and ignoring the Republican-led state's 21st century murder crisis. In September's appropriation markup, congressional Republicans proposed reducing the FBI staff by thousands of positions and underfunding the agency by more than $1 billion. They've proposed slashing resources from the ATF. They've proposed cutting grants for juvenile justice programs and hate crimes and eliminating the community violence intervention and prevention grants. They're literally defunding the police. So no matter what they say at today's hearing, congressional Republicans have proven that they are not investing in keeping American communities safe from violent crime. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
What we just witnessed was more than an opening statement. It was a political indictment delivered on the floor of a congressional hearing. Representative Crockett's strategy was to seize the narrative, using the Republican-led hearing on law and order as a platform to accuse them of being the primary violators of that very principle. The core of Crockett's argument rests on the idea of hypocrisy and weaponization. She argues that the Republican focus on defunding the FBI and ATF, which she terms literally defunding the police, while simultaneously defending figures accused of serious crimes, exposes their true agenda. The key actions were the presentation of the 5 photographs, each designed to evoke a specific scandal: the Epstein connection, alleged financial corruption involving Kristi Noem, and the alleged political protection of figures like Tom Homan and Ed Martin. The strength of her delivery was in the visual aid, which is highly effective for a televised hearing, but the factual error regarding Governor Noem's title is a vulnerability that will be exploited. The immediate consequences of this statement are significant. Politically, it injects a powerful counter-narrative into the public discourse, forcing Republicans to defend their own figures against charges of corruption, rather than simply prosecuting their political agenda. It provides Democrats with a soundbite-rich, visually compelling argument to use in campaign messaging. Socially, it further deepens the partisan divide, as supporters will see it as a brave, truth-telling moment, while opponents will dismiss it as a politically motivated smear campaign filled with inaccuracies. The long-term effect is a further erosion of trust in the integrity of congressional hearings, which are increasingly becoming venues for political attacks rather than legislative debate. So, where does this go? The immediate next step will be a flurry of responses from the Republican side, likely focusing on the factual error regarding Governor Noem to discredit the entire presentation. For the Democrats, the path forward is to double down on the core allegations of corruption, regardless of the minor error, as the visual impact of the Epstein and alleged financial misconduct claims is what will resonate with voters. This exchange is a preview of the 2024 election cycle, where the definition of law and order will be a central battleground. We can expect to see these images and these allegations resurface repeatedly in political ads and debates. Public reaction to Crockett's remarks has been sharply polarized. On social media, she has been hailed as a hero by her base, with clips of her speech going viral. Conversely, conservative commentators and Republican officials have condemned the speech as a baseless, desperate attack. Expert analysts are divided. Some view it as a brilliant piece of political strategy, a successful attempt to change the subject and put the opposition on the defensive. Others see it as a dangerous escalation of political rhetoric, prioritizing sensationalism over factual precision, especially given the Noem error. The consensus, however, is that this moment marks a new high watermark for aggressive, no-holds-barred political theater in Congress. Representative Crockett's opening statement was a calculated risk. It was a powerful, visually striking moment that successfully reframed the debate over law and order. But it also highlighted the fine line between political commentary and factual reporting in the modern political arena. The real takeaway for the American public is this: when politicians talk about restoring order, we must look closely at whose order they are trying to restore and whose alleged crimes they are willing to overlook. This is Capital Current, keeping you informed on the real power dynamics shaping our nation.